Los Angeles, 2011. Inside the massive, glowing structure of the Staples Center, nearly 20,000 fans filled the arena with a restless, electric excitement. Stevie Wonder was headlining a charity concert, a night dedicated to raising funds for children battling life-threatening illnesses. The atmosphere throbbed with joy, hope, and anticipation, but behind the curtains, something far heavier was unfolding. A small, fragile boy named Elias Turner, only 7 years old, stood beside. His mother, gripping her hand with fingers thin as twigs. Elias had brain cancer. Doctors had quietly told his family he didn't have much time left. But what he did have was a dream to touch Stevie Wonder's piano just once in his life, not play a full song, not perform, just touch the keys that had shaped the soundtrack of his short but beautiful world. Stevie, unaware of the child waiting backstage, was in his dressing room adjusting his earpiece when one of the event coordinators approached him with hesitation. "Stevie, there's a child here tonight," she said gently. "He doesn't have long. He told his mom the only thing he wants before it's time is to play one note on your piano." Stevie froze mid-motion. The idea pierced him deeply. He had granted wishes before, met fans, visited hospitals, but something about this request, this final wish, hit him differently. He felt his chest tighten, a quiet ache blooming behind his ribs. Without hesitation, he said, "Bring him to me." The coordinator shook her head softly. "He wants to do it on stage, in front of everyone." Stevie's breath caught. He placed a hand over his heart. "Then that's exactly where he'll do it." On the other side of the arena, Elias's mother knelt before her son, adjusting the little beanie that covered the scar tracing across his scalp. "Are you sure you're strong enough, sweetheart?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Elias nodded, eyes bright, despite the shadows beneath them. "Mama, I want to hear the piano up close. I want to feel the music in my fingers." His mother bit her lip to keep from crying. When the announcement came over the dressing room speaker, "Stevie, 2 minutes to stage," the coordinator rushed back to Elias and whispered, "He said yes." The little boy's face lit up with a glow so pure it dissolved the fear in everyone around him. As Stevie prepared to walk onto the stage, he felt something stirring inside him, a sense that tonight would not be just another performance. Tonight would become something unforgettable. And as the lights dimmed and 20,000 fans erupted into applause, he stepped into the spotlight carrying the weight of a child's final dream. The arena lights swept across the audience in wide, shimmering arcs as Stevie took his place at center stage, the cheers rising like a tidal wave around him. He smiled, soaking in the energy, yet beneath the warmth of the crowd, his thoughts gravitated toward the small boy waiting backstage. He could almost feel Elias's presence, faint but steady, like a tremor of hope pulsing through the building. Stevie played through his opening number, fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys, but his heart beat with a different rhythm tonight. When the final chord echoed into the rafters, he lifted his hand, signaling the band to pause. The arena fell still, eager, curious, unaware of what was about to unfold. Stevie adjusted his mic, his voice softening into something tender. "Before we go on," he said, "there's someone very special here tonight. Someone whose courage, well, it moved me more than I can say." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Backstage, Elias tightened his grip on his mother's hand. "Is it time?" he whispered. His voice was raspy, weak, but filled with awe. His mother nodded, tears already slipping down her cheeks. "Yes, baby, Stevie's calling you." A stagehand approached, kneeling to Elias's level. "Hey, champ," he said gently, "I'm gonna lift you, okay?" Elias nodded, too excited to speak. The man scooped him carefully into his arms, carrying him toward the glowing mouth of the stage. As they neared the curtain, Elias pressed a trembling palm against his chest. "Mama," he whispered, "my heart feels big." She brushed a hand through his hair, smiling through her tears. "That's because it's full, sweetheart." At the curtain's edge, the boy reached out, blindly, feeling the warmth of the lights spilling through the opening. "I can hear the piano," Elias breathed. "It sounds like stars." Stevie turned slightly toward the wings, sensing the shift in the air. "I want you all to meet someone incredibly brave," he said, his voice cracking. "His name is Elias. Gasps fluttered through the arena as the spotlight shifted, illuminating the backstage corridor. When the stagehand stepped through the curtain carrying the frail, beanie-wearing child, the entire arena erupted, not in cheers but in something deeper, a collective swell of emotion, soft cries, hands covering mouths, 20,000 hearts breaking open at once. Stevie stepped away from his piano and extended his arms. "Bring him here," he whispered. Elias reached out instinctively, small fingers stretching toward the voice that had comforted him through countless hospital nights. As the stagehand transferred him gently to Stevie's embrace, the crowd rose to their feet. Stevie held the boy close, feeling the fragility of his frame, the strength of his spirit. "Hey, young man," Stevie murmured. "I hear you want to play my piano." Elias nodded against his shoulder. "Just one note." Stevie smiled. "Then let's make it a good one." And the arena fell into a silence so profound it felt like the world itself had stopped to listen. Stevie carried Elias toward the grand piano with a slowness that felt ceremonial, sacred, each step measured not by rhythm but by reverence. The arena watched in breathless silence, as though any sudden sound might shatter the moment. The stage lights dimmed to a soft golden glow, illuminating Stevie's silhouette and the tiny boy cradled in his arms. When they reached the piano bench, Stevie lowered himself carefully, keeping Elias nestled securely against his chest. The boy's small fingers twitched, reaching instinctively toward the instrument he had only ever dreamed of touching. Stevie guided his hand gently. "Easy now," he whispered. "The keys are right here." Elias's fingertips brushed the cool ivory, and he gasped, a soft, wondrous sound that sent a ripple of emotion through the entire arena. His mother, standing just beyond the curtain, covered her mouth as her knees buckled with emotion. Stevie placed one hand over Elias's, steadying the boy's trembling fingers. "Take your time," he murmured. "The piano's listening." Elias inhaled shakily, the breath catching in his fragile chest. His brow furrowed with concentration, his lips parting as if he were trying to feel the music through the very texture of the keys. Stevie's presence wrapped around him like a shield, a warmth that kept the vastness of the arena from overwhelming the tiny boy. And slowly, so slowly it felt like the world was holding its breath, Elias pressed down one key. A single, pure note drifted through the stadium, hanging in the air like a beam of light. It was simple, small, barely, stronger than the child who played it, yet it struck every heart in the building with the force of a tidal wave. 20,000 people gasped as one. Tears fell without restraint. It wasn't just a note, it was a farewell, a wish, a heartbeat turned into sound. Stevie's throat tightened as he absorbed the moment. He felt the vibration through the bench, through Elias's tiny hand, through his own chest. "Beautiful," Stevie whispered, his voice trembling. Elias smiled faintly, a fragile light glowing through the exhaustion etched into his face. Can I play another?" he asked. Stevie nodded, guiding his hand back to the keys. "As many as you want, young man." But even as Elias lifted his fingers again, his small body leaned into Stevie's shoulder, weary from the effort of simply existing. Stevie steadied him with both arms, supporting him not just physically, but spiritually. As the second note rose, a low, warm tone that quivered at the edges, the audience broke. Again, unable to withstand the purity of what they were witnessing, some hugged strangers, others sank into their seats, overwhelmed. Up in the mezzanine, a grown man sobbed openly, whispering, "God, please hold that child." And Stevie Wonder, holding a dying boy at his piano, felt the kind of ache that rearranges a person's soul forever. Elias's second note lingered in the air, trembling with a softness that seemed to wrap around every person in the arena. Stevie held him closer, feeling the child's breath growing shallower against his chest. The energy in the room shifted again, no longer awe, no longer sorrow, but something deeper, a reverence, a collective understanding that they were witnessing a moment no stage, no concert, no recording could ever replicate. Stevie leaned his forehead gently against Elias's temple and whispered, "You're doing amazing, little one." Elias exhaled a tiny laugh, a sound so delicate Stevie felt it more than heard it. "It feels warm," the boy murmured, referring to the vibration of the piano. Stevie nodded slowly. "That's music hugging you back. And with the arena still frozen in a hush so complete that even the hum of the amplifiers seemed muted, Stevie guided Elias's hand toward the keys once more, giving him full command. This time, Stevie didn't help him press the note. He simply held him steady as Elias lifted his trembling fingers and, using all the strength left in him, pressed down on a third key. The sound was uneven, fragile, almost breaking under its own weight, yet it carried the force of a lifetime. It resonated not as a tone, but as a message, a child making his final imprint on a world he was already preparing to leave. The audience reacted instantly. A wave of sobs broke across the arena. Fans clung to each other. Some buried their faces in their hands. Others simply stood still, letting silent tears stream down their cheeks. The note faded slowly into the rafters, dissolving into a silence that felt holy. Stevie closed his eyes, fighting the burn behind them. He wished he could take away the boy's pain. He wished he could trade places for just one day. But all he could do, all any of them could do, was honor him. Elias slumped into Stevie's chest, exhausted, his body as light as a bundle of feathers. Stevie tightened his arms around him, rocking him gently. "You okay, sweetheart?" he whispered. Elias nodded weakly, his voice barely a breath. "I did it, Mr. Stevie. I played your piano." Stevie's heart cracked open. He swallowed hard and kissed the top of the boy's beanie. "You didn't just play it," he whispered. "You blessed it." The audience erupted, not in cheers, but in the soft, soul-deep applause of people who had been changed. Applause that rolled through the arena like warm rain. Elias lifted his head slightly, turning toward the sound he couldn't see. "They're clapping for me?" he asked softly. Stevie smiled through tears he didn't bother hiding. "They're clapping because you touched their hearts," he said, "and that's something only the greatest musicians in the world can do." As Stevie rested his cheek against the boy's fragile head, the arena glowed with a single truth. Music had become a bridge between a fading life and the thousands witnessing its final beautiful flicker. As the applause softened into a gentle, trembling hush, Stevie shifted slightly on the piano bench, adjusting his hold so Elias could sit upright against him. The boy's breathing was light and uneven, each inhale a fragile thread tying him to the moment. Stevie brushed a hand over Elias's back, moving slowly, carefully, as though the child were made of glass. "You still with me, little man?" he whispered. Elias nodded faintly, his voice caught between exhaustion and wonder. "I can feel them, all of them. It feels like the whole room is hugging me." Stevie swallowed hard. "That's because they are." Behind them, the band had gone completely still. No one dared touch an instrument. No one dared break what had become less a performance and more a prayer. Even the technicians, the camera operators, the ushers, all stood frozen, hands over their mouths or their hearts, undone by the purity of what they were witnessing. Elias lifted one trembling hand and placed it flat on the piano lid. "Mr. Stevie," he whispered, "why does the piano feel like it's alive?" Stevie's voice cracked as he answered, "Because music has a soul, sweetheart, and you just woke it up." The boy let out a soft, breathy laugh, the kind that carries both joy and pain in the same tiny exhale. Stevie adjusted him gently, sensing how much strength the child was using just to stay upright. "Do you want to play another note?" Stevie asked. Elias paused, thinking, then shook his head. I think I played my perfect one already." The honesty of that answer hit Stevie like a blow. He nodded slowly, pressing his cheek against the top of the boy's head. "Then that's enough," he murmured. "More than enough." The crowd, sensing the sacredness of the exchange, held their silence like a collective breath suspended between worlds. Elias turned his face towards Stevie's voice, eyes half closed beneath the beanie, his expression serene. "Mr. Stevie, thank you for letting me do this." Stevie's throat tightened so painfully he couldn't speak for a moment. He finally managed, "No, young man, thank you for reminding all of us what music is for." A tremor went through the audience, sobs, sniffles, hands clasping strangers' arms. Elias's mother, still hidden near the curtain, collapsed into the arms of a stage assistant, overwhelmed by the sight of her child glowing with more life than he had in months. Elias breathed out softly, a sigh full of peace. "I feel happy," he whispered. Stevie closed his eyes, tears slipping freely down his cheeks. "Hold on to that feeling," he he murmured. "Hold it tight." And as he wrapped the boy gently against his chest, the arena seemed to pulse with a single, unified heartbeat. Thousands of souls joining in silent gratitude for a child who had just given them a gift none of them would ever forget. Stevie felt Elias's small body relax even further, the boy's weight settling into him like a soft whisper. The warmth of the piano lights wrapped around them both, creating a golden cocoon in the center of the vast arena. Stevie shifted slightly, cradling Elias with both arms now, instinctively protecting him from the immensity of the moment. "You did something powerful tonight," Stevie murmured. Elias's lips curled into the faintest smile. "I just wanted to know what music feels like." Stevie gently placed the boy's hand against his own chest. "Feel that?" he whispered. Elias nodded, sensing the steady rhythm of Stevie's heartbeat. "That's where music lives before it becomes sound." The audience watched in complete reverence, the silence so deep it felt like a blanket covering every seat, every soul. Some fans mouthed silent blessings, others simply cried, unable to process the beauty unfolding before them. Stevie lifted Elias slightly to adjust his posture, but the boy held on to him with surprising strength. "Don't go," Elias murmured. Stevie hugged him closer. "I'm right here, young man, not going anywhere." Elias leaned his head against Stevie's shoulder, eyelids fluttering as fatigue washed through him like a tide. His breaths grew slower, softer but peaceful. "Mr. Stevie," he whispered, "when I go, do you think there's music in heaven?" The question shattered Stevie. He inhaled sharply, steadying his voice before it broke completely. "I think," he said softly, "that heaven sounds exactly like you playing that note." Elias smiled faintly, and a soft whimper rippled across the audience, a sound of collective heartbreak. Even the band members, hardened by years on the road, wiped their eyes. Behind the curtain, Elias's mother clutched her chest, her sobs silent but violent. As Stevie rocked him gently, Elias whispered, "I'm not scared anymore." Stevie closed his eyes, letting the tears fall freely. "That's because you made the whole world shine tonight," he answered. The child's breathing steadied into a slower rhythm, each exhale carrying a little less weight, a little more surrender. Stevie felt it, felt the shift, the quieting. He pressed a kiss to the top of Elias's beanie and whispered, "You're safe, you're loved, and you're unforgettable." The audience saw none of the internal ache tearing through Stevie, but they felt its echo in the air around them. A grown man in the front row fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Two women hugged strangers beside them. The entire arena had become a sanctuary, a sacred space built from shared grief, awe, and love. And there, under the soft glow of the piano lights, Stevie Wonder held a fading child, like the most precious melody he had ever carried. Elias's small fingers curled weakly around Stevie's shirt, gripping just enough to let the world know he was still there, still present, still fighting for each breath that fluttered through his fragile chest. Stevie rocked him gently, slow and rhythmic, creating a heartbeat of motion meant to soothe the boy's trembling body. The arena remained a cathedral of silence, thousands of people suspended in the kind of stillness usually reserved for prayer. Elias lifted his chin slightly, leaning toward Stevie's voice. "Mr. Stevie," he whispered. Stevie lowered his head until their foreheads touched. "Yes, sweetheart." Elias took a shaky breath. "When you play the piano, I feel like I'm not sick." Stevie closed his eyes as the tears came again, hot and unstoppable. "Then we'll play together," he said softly. "You and me, right here, right now." Stevie guided Elias's hand once more to the piano keys, this time not to press a note, but to simply rest there. Elias's fingertips touched the ivory with a tenderness that made the entire arena tremble. Stevie placed his own hand gently over the boy's, adding his warmth to the fragile contact. "Feel that?" Stevie whispered. Elias nodded, his voice barely audible. "It feels like light." Stevie smiled, though it trembled. "That's the music inside you." For a moment, time stopped. The world outside the arena ceased to exist. It was only Stevie, a dying child, and a piano holding the weight of 20,000 hearts. Elias shifted slightly, exhausted. His breathing slowed again, but this time there was no fear in it, only peace. He swallowed softly. "Mr. Stevie, thank you for letting me be part of your song. Stevie held him closer, his voice cracking with every word. Elias, you are the song. A faint smile formed on Elias's face, gentle, content, almost glowing. His body relaxed fully, surrendering to Stevie's arms. The hush in the arena deepened into a reverent stillness, as if the entire world leaned closer to embrace the moment. Elias exhaled one last soft breath, a sound filled not with pain, but with completion. Then his head rested fully on Stevie's shoulder, peaceful and weightless. Stevie felt the change immediately. His breath caught, his arms tightened instinctively around the child. He pressed his cheek into Elias's hair and whispered, trembling, "Rest now, sweetheart." The crowd, though they didn't know exactly what had happened, felt something shift, a collective emotional breaking. Soft sobs spread through the arena. Stevie stayed seated, holding the little boy against his chest, rocking him gently as if cradling a final note that refused to fade. No spotlight, no applause, no music followed. Just a man, a child, and 20,000 souls witnessing the most heartbreaking and beautiful moment of their lives. For several long moments, Stevie did not move. He remained seated at the piano, holding Elias's small, weightless body against his chest, rocking him gently as though motion alone could keep him tethered to the world. The arena stayed silent. No music, no whispers, not even the rustle of clothing, just breathless stillness. Slowly, Stevie pressed his cheek to the top of the boy's head and whispered something only Elias, and now God, could hear. A soft prayer, a thank you, a goodbye. When he finally stood, he did so with reverence, lifting the child in his arms as if he were carrying the most fragile melody ever written. The stage crew opened the curtain slightly, just enough for Elias's mother to rush forward. She collapsed into Stevie, hands trembling as she kissed her son's forehead. Stevie placed Elias gently into her arms, his own hands shaking uncontrollably. "He wasn't afraid," Stevie whispered. "He was shining." His mother wept, clutching the child to her chest as though she could shield him from the world's harshness even now. Stevie stepped back, wiping his tears with the back of his hand, but the emotion wouldn't stop. He turned toward the audience, the same audience that had witnessed every breath, every note, every miracle of the last few minutes, and walked slowly to the microphone. He had no song planned, no speech rehearsed, but when he opened his mouth, his voice carried the weight of a galaxy. "Tonight," he began, pausing as his voice cracked, "a brave little boy named Elias gave us the purest music I've ever heard." A tremor swept through the arena. People sobbed openly, some holding hands with strangers, some dropping their heads into their palms. Stevie continued, each word trembling but true. "Music isn't about perfection. It isn't about fame. It's about love. And this child, this beautiful soul, just reminded us all what love sounds like." The audience rose to their feet, not with cheers, but with a standing ovation, built from gratitude and grief. When Stevie returned, backstage, his legs nearly buckled beneath him. Clarence caught him, pulling him into a tight embrace. Neither man spoke. They didn't need to. The weight of the moment hung heavy between them. Later that night, Stevie sat alone in his dressing room, staring at the piano keys on his travel keyboard. He pressed a single note, a soft, trembling tone, and whispered, "For you, Elias." It was his private tribute, a promise to carry the boy's light forward. In the weeks that followed, headlines around the world spoke of the night. Stevie Wonder stopped a stadium and held a dying child in his arms. Some called it the most emotional moment in concert history. Others called it a miracle. But Stevie never described it that way. Whenever asked, he simply said, "I didn't give that boy a moment. He gave one to all of us." And for the rest of his life, every time Stevie touched a piano key, he remembered the tiny hands that once pressed those keys with the courage of an angel.